Joaquín Guzmán, nicknamed El Chapo, Mexican slang for shorty, due to his short stature and stocky physique, is undeniably one of the most notorious criminals of the 21st century. His prison escapes, the vast and powerful criminal empire he led, and his ability to evade law enforcement for extended periods have elevated him to legendary status in the world of organized crime. His notoriety transcended criminal circles, making him a household name and a subject of fascination for many. This is the real-life story of El Chapo, the rise. El Chapo entered the drug trade through his father's involvement in growing marijuana for local dealers. In the 1970s, he collaborated with Héctor Luis Palma Salazar, a rising Mexican drug lord, before joining Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, the founder of the Guadalajara Cartel. After Felix's arrest in 1988, Guzmán formed his own cartel with Palma Salazar, the Sinaloa Cartel, as a result of changes within the supply lines used by Colombian drug organizations. Guzmán's operations expanded, bringing him immense wealth and power throughout Mexico, the United States, and Europe. El Chapo's ascent to power resulted from a combination of factors, including his strategic leadership within the Sinaloa Cartel, his ruthless tactics, and the dynamics of the drug trade in Mexico. He initiated his criminal career with the Guadalajara Cartel, and after the group's decline in the late 1980s, which provided him access to an established criminal organization, he founded the Sinaloa Cartel. El Chapo's rise can be attributed to his strategic thinking and leadership, enabling him to organize and execute intricate drug trafficking operations, often employing sophisticated methods like tunnels and submarines. His readiness to employ violence and extreme measures to eliminate rivals or threats also bolstered his reputation within the criminal world. Guzmán's involvement in corruption and bribery schemes infiltrated law enforcement agencies and co-opted government officials, granting him a level of impunity. His control over critical drug trafficking routes, especially along the US-Mexico border, allowed him to amass wealth and influence, giving him significant leverage over other drug traffickers and criminal groups. Despite his criminal activities, El Chapo demonstrated a sharp business acumen, understanding the economics of the drug trade, including supply and demand dynamics. His charismatic and enigmatic persona contributed to his notoriety, making him somewhat of a folk hero in certain Mexican communities, which complicated law enforcement efforts to apprehend him. Moving on. First prison escape. In early 2001, Joaquín Archibaldo Guzmán Loera, the Mexican drug trafficker better known as El Chapo, decided he didn't want to be in prison any longer. El Chapo had been at Puente Grande, the maximum security prison outside of the city of Guadalajara since 1995, locked up for his role in a bloody shootout in 1993 at the Guadalajara airport. And he'd been doing all right at Puente Grande, had enjoyed many of the same creature comforts during his years in Puente Grande as he had on the outside. Good food, women, volleyball, and unlike his life on the outside, he even got to sleep in the same place every night. Much of this was thanks to his patronage of Damaso López Núñez, who'd taken over as Deputy Director of Security in 1999 and had proved even more pliant than his predecessor in seeing to it that all of El Chapo's needs were met. When Damaso arrived, El Chapo immediately began to shower money and gifts on him. $10,000 in cash here, a house there. When one of Damaso's children was injured in an accident, it was El Chapo who paid the child's medical bills. When I needed anything, I would ask, and he would give it to me, Damaso said years later. Unfortunately for El Chapo, Damaso had left Puente Grande in the fall of 2000, under a cloud of suspicion amid drastically belated efforts by the government to investigate corruption there. On January 18, 2001, everything changed for El Chapo when the Supreme Court of Mexico ruled that the United States could extradite Mexican prisoners such as El Chapo, as long as the death penalty was taken off the table. His worst fear, an American prison cell, was suddenly much closer to reality. So the next day he left, smuggled out the door tucked into a laundry cart, rolled to freedom by a guard known as El Chito. And nobody saw fit to stop him. Then, it was on February 22nd, 2014, that the notorious drug lord was captured in a beachfront hotel in Mazatlan. The operation, led by the Mexican Navy with intelligence support from the DEA and U.S. Marshals, involved over 65 Marines. Before the arrest, raids on Sinaloa Cartel properties were conducted. Guzmán, who had been hiding in the Miramar condominiums, attempted to resist arrest, but was subdued and hit 4 times during the struggle. No shots were fired. After the arrest, he was flown to Mexico City, confirmed through fingerprint examination, and presented at a press conference before being transferred to a maximum security prison in Almoloya de Juarez. The entire operation was conducted with heightened surveillance, and Guzmán's capture marked a significant milestone in the fight against organized crime. But it was not for long. Second prison escape. In 2015, after Mexico's most notorious drug lord stepped into a shower and slipped into a tunnel to escape from a maximum security prison, authorities vowed it wouldn't be long before the Sinaloa Cartel chief was behind bars again. Prison security cameras last recorded images of Joaquín El Chapo, Guzmán, at nighttime, just before he apparently crawled through a hole in the shower area of his cell block at the Altiplano Federal Prison. Authorities said they later discovered a lighted and ventilated tunnel nearly a mile long that stretched from the prison to a half-built house, where investigators were searching for signs of Guzmán's whereabouts Sunday. At that time, Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto, speaking to reporters from France, where he was traveling on a state visit, avoided mentioning the drug lord by name, but he said he was closely following news of the escape of a man who had been among the most wanted criminals in Mexico and around the world. Peña Nieto said he was deeply troubled by a very unfortunate event that has outraged Mexican society. He vowed that his government would recapture Guzmán, step up prison security, and investigate whether any prison workers helped the kingpin break out. This represents, without a doubt, an affront to the Mexican state. But also, I am confident that the institutions of the Mexican state, particularly those in charge of public safety, are at the level, with the strength and determination, to recapture this criminal, Peña Nieto said. News that he'd somehow managed to break out again drew sharp condemnation at home from Peña Nieto's political opponents and abroad from U.S. officials who'd pushed for his extradition. One would have assumed that he would have been the most watched criminal in the world, and apparently that just didn't happen. This is a huge embarrassment for the Mexican government, said Ana Maria Salazar, a security analyst and former Pentagon counter-narcotics official. Obviously, it's going to raise a lot of questions as to what's happening with the Mexican criminal justice system. Current circumstances. In Sept 2023, Joaquín El Chapo, Guzmán's wife, Emma Coronel Aispuro, got free after serving her 3-year prison term. Most of her time was served in a Texas prison for her role in her husband's vast drug empire. In the end, she was transferred to a low-security halfway house in California before her release. But her husband, the former head of the powerful Mexican Sinaloa Cartel, will spend the rest of his life in a federal prison south of Denver. It is considered the most secure prison in the world. To give a backstory, acting on citizens' reports, the Mexican Navy surveilled a Los Mochis house, suspecting a high-priority target in Operation Black Swan on January 8, 2016. 17 Marines raided the site after gunmen placed a taco order. Guzmán and a lieutenant escaped through a tunnel, but Guzmán was later apprehended south of Los Mochis. Despite bribery attempts, officers refused, and fearing an attack by 40 assassins, they transferred Guzmán to a motel before handing him to the Marines. Once recaptured, he was extradited to the U.S., where he stood trial and was convicted in 2019 to life in prison on trafficking charges. It's in the United States that he'll spend the rest of his life along with some of the country's biggest criminals. USP Florence Admax is known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies. It's been home to high-profile prisoners like shoe bomber Richard Reed, the late Unabomber Ted Kaczynski, Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, spies, gang, and syndicate leaders. The prison is spread out over 50 acres in Florence, Colorado. Prisoners are kept in 7 by 12-foot reinforced concrete cells. And that concludes today's video. If you enjoyed the content, kindly hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. To stay updated on future uploads, be sure to click the notification bell. Feel free to share this video with your friends and family. Do share your thoughts and feedback in the comments section. Looking forward to catching you again in the next video.